we started in lesson 9.3 solving, right? So like we looked at the graph, where does it cross the x-axis? Then we used those square roots, where we had to get x squared by itself and solve that way. The difference with these today is that it's not just an x squared term, there's an x term. Okay, so an x term or an m term or whatever. Now, we're going to talk about zero product property. How do you multiply to get 0? 0. It has to be 0 times something, right? So if two things multiply equals 0, so if A times B multiplies to equal 0, then we know either A is 0 or B is 0. And we're going to use that idea here. In this first example, it's x plus 1, parentheses, x minus 5 in parentheses equals 0. But realize parentheses butted up against each other like that is parentheses times parentheses, right? So do we remember how the zero product property works? If x plus 1 times x minus 5 equals 0. Remember how to do this? No? We're trying to solve. If two things multiply to equal 0, then one of them has to be 0. And so what we can, since we're going to want our equations equal to 0 today, these two things multiply to equal 0, then we can say either x plus 1 equals 0, or x minus 5 equals 0. Okay? So that's the idea, that it has to be, the equation has to equal 0, and it has to be factored. But then two pieces multiplying equals 0, you set each part equal to 0. Right? Yeah. It's just doing the basic work. If it's x plus 1, we are going to subtract 1. If it's x minus 5, we are going to add 5. And so we come up with possible solutions of x equals negative 1 or x equals 5. Okay? So once they're in factored form, it's a piece of cake to solve. Now, let's see, Math Excel, they're probably going to want answer, comma, answer, if I had to guess, right?
Probably negative 1, negative 5.
Like negative 1, comma, 5 is what they're probably going to want. Okay? In fact, I just looked at it this morning. I can't remember already. So, okay, so let's look at this as a second example. 2x plus 3 times x minus 4 equals 0. Notice what's going on.
Equals 0.
Two pieces multiplying to equal 0. So, what do I do? Okay. So officially, we're going to set each part equal to 0, right? So I'm going to set 2x plus 3 equals 0 and x minus 4 equals 0. Kylie's already figured out the easy one. She's leaving the other one for you, Jacob. No? Or do you know? If it's 2x plus 3, what do we do? Huh? Oh. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you knew it. I thought you looked like you were like, oh yeah, I remember. So if it's 2x plus 3, it's just basically how do we solve? If it's 2x plus 3, I'm going to subtract 3. If we subtract 3 on the left, subtract 3 on the right.
I remember once I saved.
Yeah.
Before I get.
We've got 2x, 3 minus 3,
0.
cancels. 0 minus 3, negative 3. Now this one, unlike the other ones, we'd just be done. But since it still says 2x, what do I do with 2x? If it's 2 times x, we're going to divide. If we divide one part by 2, we divide the other part. So 2 divided by 2 cancel, or is 1, cancels to be 1x. Negative 3 divided by 2. Okay, Kylie says negative 1.5. Math Excel could very easily say they want a fraction or integer. They could very easily say no decimals. So I'm going to say negative 3/2. Now, for my purposes, I'm fine with negative 1.5. Okay, that's equivalent. But I'm just saying that Math Excel might not like it. I never wrote it down, but over here it was x minus 4. So if it's x minus 4, we're going to add 4. And x is 4. How do we feel with that part? That's the easy stuff, isn't it? Okay. As we look at the next two, or the next ones, what do you notice?
They are already
Yeah, they're multiplied out the way they are, so we're going to have to factor them, aren't we? Now, well, we'll go ahead and talk about it. It's good. I don't think I saw any like this in homework, but technically, when we're factoring, our first step should always be something about a GCF. Do x squared and 8x have anything in common? They both have x, don't they? So we can factor out an x, which means when I factor out an x, I'm going to put an x out front. And notice the equation is already equal to 0. I forgot to mention that. So what happens if it's x squared and we divide by x? Right, and you can even think like this if you want. X squared divided by x is x minus, what about 8x divided by x? What's 8x divided by x? The x's will cancel, and we'll have 8 equals 0. Are you filling in your notes with us?
I was writing it on paper. So I didn't.
Okay. Well, fill in your notes so you have them come test time. Okay. So now, notice what I have here. I have x times x minus 8. It looks a little different,
no.
but do we have two things multiplying to equal 0?
Yeah. So for x, it purposes is just a, but is it like a separate x? Okay.
So if we're saying each part, like up here, it was x plus 1, I said equal to 0, and x minus 5.
X times x minus 8. So a minus 8 is 0. The other x just means 0.
Yeah. Because what we're going to do is we're going to set x as one of our factors right here.
Pardon the interruption. Mr. McDermott, could you please report to the middle school office? Thank you.
It's prep period, so obviously they can't find wherever you disappeared to and they need something, but. Okay, so we're going to set up x counts as a factor, x equals 0, x minus 8 equals 0. If x equals 0, then that's one of my answers. If it's x minus 8, you already know we're going to add 8, and x is 8. So my solutions are 0 and 8. Okay. I don't know if there ended up being any GCF factored on homework or not, but it's always something you should check for. Okay. Next example, m squared minus 5m minus 14 equals 0.
Okay, well, you have two parentheses.
Remember this factoring?
Yeah, you put n at the beginning of each squared. And then it is product AC, right?
You don't have to go the difficult way here. Actually, you don't want to do product of AC if you're going ahead and setting up your two parentheses. Save that product of AC. Well, I guess you could talk AC, but A is just 1. So if we just talk a product of the C value, which one's C?
14.
So we're going to need a product of negative 14 and a sum of negative 5. Which actually, I should say a sum of the B term, which in this case is negative 5. So remember, when it's just x squared plus or minus an x term plus or minus a number, we can set up 2 parentheses. M squared breaks into m times m. Write the right thing here. Product of negative 14. What multiplies to be 14?
2 and 7.
Yeah. Officially, there's 1 and 14
Yeah.
and 2 and 7. Which one's somehow going to give me 5?
Negative 2 plus 7.
Yeah, it's got to be the 2 and 7. If it adds to be negative and multiplies to be negative, bigger number negative. What do I do with that 2 and negative 7?
Well, they go m plus 2 and minus. That's what I
Okay. M plus 2 times m minus 7 equals 0. Am I done?
No,
Why am I not done?
because we don't even know where that goes.
Yeah, we're solving today, aren't we? It's not just about factoring and you're done. We're solving. So, take each part and set it equal to 0. So m plus 2 equals 0. And minus 7 equals 0.
Subtract 2 on both sides, and it's going to be negative 2.
Okay. If it's m plus 2, we're going to subtract 2. So m equals negative 2. Jacob, what am I doing with m minus 7?
Subtracting.
It's already m minus 7, so we're going to, well, how do I get it to be m equals? If it's minus 7, we want to add 7. And so then we're going to get m equals,
Negative 2 and 7.
yeah, 7 is your second answer, negative 2 is the previous answer. So these are using these factoring skills we worked on back in chapter 8. Okay. Look at the next one.
A squared plus B.
What's different about the next one?
There's no number, it's relative to the
Well, the GCF of that is P.
I don't want to talk about GCF yet, though. Why would I say that?
You can combine the P's.
No.
I don't know.
I can't combine the p's because they're not the same
Oh, yeah. That's it.
exponent. How is this equation different from every other equation we've worked with today?
Do we have any other numbers on the variable side thingy?
It what?
It doesn't have any other numbers on that side.
Oh, just because it's just p's?
Yeah.
Don't let that hang you up, though. What's different about the right side of this equation compared to all others today?
Oh, it's not 0. Gee.
There we go. Okay. So in order for any of this math we're doing today to work, it has to equal 0. So your very first step, and I probably haven't done a very good job of saying, hey, does it equal 0? Does it equal 0? Does it equal 0? Because that should be our first question to ourselves every time. Teacher failure there, okay? I didn't bug you guys enough about it to get it stuck in your brains. Does it equal 0?
No.
So what do I do to make this equal 0?
Subtract.
If it's a positive 20, we want to subtract it to the other side. If I subtract 20 on the right, we're going to subtract 20 on the left. So I'm going to have still p squared, still plus p, minus 20 equals 0. I can't put that 20 with anything else because there's no other plain numbers. And then, like the last problem, we need to
Just do the, okay, 2 parentheses. And P at the beginning.
and we can jump right into 2 parentheses because why? Because it has that form, specifically that form that has a 1 in front of the squared term. Okay, we can't just jump into 2 parentheses if there's something else in front of that squared term. Okay, I need 2 terms that multiply to be what? 2 terms, 2 numbers that multiply to be what?
Okay.
What do these numbers have to multiply to be? The number, that plain old number there, right? The C value. So officially negative 20. What do these numbers have to add to be? This should be the tricky part. You have to stop and think. What's that invisible number in front of P? And it is a 1. So, what kind of numbers multiply to equal 20? 1 and 20. 2 and 10. 4 and 5. Which pair could possibly add or subtract to be 1?
4 and 5.
4 and 5. Now, if it multiplies to be negative, that means I need a positive and negative. If it adds to be a positive,
Yeah.
bigger one's positive because it adds to be a positive, right? Okay. Now, I didn't start filling these parentheses in at all yet. What's p squared do?
P minus 4 and P plus.
Good. P minus 4 and P plus, that's supposed to be plus 5. I tried to put a plus sign in there. It didn't turn out too great. Am I done? Should we move on to the next one?
No, that's still the 1.
Oh, this one is
What have we not done yet? We can't move on quite yet.
I don't know what's something with the 20. No, we didn't.
No. Have we actually solved it?
Oh, no, we haven't even.
We just factored it, right?
Yeah, jeez.
Our job is not just to factor today. We have to factor and then solve. Set each part equal to 0. Yes. P minus 4 equals 0. P plus 5 equals 0. If it's P minus 4, we are going to add 4. P is 4. If it's P plus 5, we're going to subtract 5. And 0 minus 5 is negative 5. Now we can call it done. Okay? That's it. And I did that, I did that on purpose because that's an easy step to forget. You just, oh, I factored it. I'm done. Almost. Not quite. Okay. 2a squared minus 15a plus 18 equals 0. First question we should always check when we're solving this. Does my equation equal 0?
Yes.
Yes, it equals 0. So we've at least gotten that figured out, right? Can I jump straight into 2 parentheses?
No.
Not this time because
It's a number.
it's a 2a squared. So if I could just say a and a, life would be grand. Okay, so Makati, I think I heard you say it. We need to do a product of
AC.
AC. What's it? Do we remember it? Well, I can't really do it there. What's A?
2.
2. What's C?
18.
18.
So it's 36.
So we need a product of 36. And we need a sum of the B term. So we need a sum of negative 15. Okay. What multiplies to be 36?
1,
36.
1 and 36.
2, 6.
2, and 18.
Oh no, that's, yeah.
2 and 18.
3 and 12.
3 and 12.
4.
1, 9.
4 and 9.
6 and 6. And then the one we're going to use is probably 3 and 12.
I agree. How do I want to use these 3 and 12?
Negative and positive.
Not quite. It multiplies to be a positive, so my signs have to be the same. So if it adds to be negative, they're both going to be
Yeah.
negative. Okay. Here's the big deal. Do we remember what to do next?
Oh, yeah. Okay. From year 15, the B term, you gotta have a little branch out thing.
The little branch out thing, she says. I like it.
So,
In other words, you split that middle term. Do we want to do negative 3a minus 12a or negative 12a minus 3a?
does it really matter?
Just makes a difference of how easy it factors later.
I just put -2 minus 2.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and that way we can keep it the same. Negative 3a minus 12a. Now don't forget, 2a squared will carry down and
Also,
plus 18 and technically equals 0. Carries down. I've got 4 terms. How do I factor when there's 4 terms? Split it in half. Good. So I'm going to split it in half right after the second term. GCF of the first half. What do 2a squared and 3a both have in common?
2, I mean, no, A.
Yeah, 2 and 3, we don't have any numbers in common, but they both have an a in common. So we're going to divide both of these pieces by a. Now, make sure that a needs to go out front. 2a squared divided by a.
2,
Yeah, one of the a's cancels and you're left with 2a. Minus 3a divided by a. A's cancel and there's a 3. Repeat the process. Minus 12a plus 18. What do 12 and 18 have in common?
2,
Go bigger.
not 4. 6.
Yeah. So now, notice that 12a is actually a minus 12a. So when we factor out the 6, we actually need to factor out a negative 6. So we're going to be dividing both pieces by negative 6.
Yeah, sorry, what's the difference like between the ends on the bottom?
Don't worry about it right now.
Sorry, that's just supposed to call it.
So we're going to factor out negative 6. Negative 12a divided by negative 6.
2A.
12 divided by 6 is 2. The a sticks around. 18 divided by negative 6.
Negative.
Minus 3. Or negative 3. What makes good news here?
They match.
That equals 0.
They match. So, what are my two parentheses?
A minus 6 and 2A minus.
One of them is the A minus 6 that are the GCFs. The other is the matching of 2A minus 3. Now don't forget what we're doing. Am I done?
No.
No, we've got to
So that they factor solve the quadratic function
right, but how do we solve that quadratic function?
add 6 to both sides.
Well, we're technically going to set both parts equal to 0. A minus 6 equals 0. 2A minus 3 equals 0.
Yeah.
If it's A minus 6, I'm with you. Let's add 6. So then we end up with A equals 6. What about if it's 2A minus 3? We're going to add 3 first. So then 2A equals 3. How do I solve for A? Divide by 2. What kind of answer am I going to put there?
3 over 2.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to leave it as 3 over 2. It is 1.5 or 1.5, but I'm going to leave it as 3 over 2. Okay. I wanted to make sure and give you guys some work time. Do you realize the next one's going to be a same type problem?
Yeah.
What has to be your first step in that next problem, though?
3x.
AC.
Even before AC.
GC. Oh, no. It's not here.
Yeah. Does my equation equal 0?
Yeah.
It does not, so we would have to take that minus 4 and add 4. So 3x squared plus 13x plus 4 equals 0. And then you would do your product of AC. And it would be the same type process of this last problem. Okay? So, why don't you go ahead and spend a little time working on homework. Some of the first problems in homework are just like some of the first problems we did in notes, where you just have to set each part equal to 0. It's already factored. Some of them you have to factor. Gosh. Ooh. Why won't it let me? I give up. Okay, good enough. Okay, good enough.